Hey everyone, welcome to the Houndations podcast. I'm your host, Tony Peterson. It's still the dog days of May here at Meat Eater. And I'm going to talk to a dog trainer named Bob Owens today. Bob hosts a podcast called Lone Duck's Gun Dog Chronicles, and he is a master of figuring out how to get dogs to level up, which is what we are going to dive pretty deep into right now. I met Bob Owens down in South Carolina a few months back at the Southeastern Wildlife Expo in Charleston. And predictably, we almost instantly started talking about dogs. Bob is the host of a podcast dedicated to all things related to training dogs, but he's also just one hell of a dog trainer himself who has molded some of the best bird dogs and field trial dogs in the country. He's an absolute expert at getting the most out of dogs, and that's what we're going to talk about on this show right now. Bob, it is good to see your smiling face, buddy.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you spent all day today training, huh?
I did. I just got back and dogs are fed and cooling down and chilling out and hop on a podcast.
How many dogs did you work with today?
We have 21 right now. And this is like the window of, I go south in the winter and come home and summer's kicking off. So by middle of May, we'll be up to about 30 dogs. And that's kind of my...
So how many of those do you actually get your hands on a day? All of them?
All of them, multiple times a day.
How do you manage that?
It's a great question. Really, it's being motivated and disciplined with your time. So, I eat lunch in 3 minutes. Right. I bring my lunch and, today it was a rotisserie chicken that I just wolfed down as fast as I could with a seltzer water, and I'm on to the next dog. So really making the most out of your time from the minute you wake up to the minute they're done. I do have a couple of employees, and so I can say, like, you guys take this crew over here and do that while I run blinds, and then we come back together. But typically dogs are getting 2 to 3 setups or sessions, could be collar conditioning and obedience, and then go out and get their marks. Or they're doing force fetch and dog stand work while I'm running T pattern, stuff like that. So it's not just me touching all 30, but yeah, we're rolling.
Yeah. So you have to plan, you have to kind of meticulously plan your day out and know that you have 20 minutes for this dog or a half hour for this dog or whatever, and you got to get the most out of them in that time frame, because you can't see something and decide, well, we're going to go an extra hour with this dog, because it's just not a possibility.
Well, actually, I would argue that that's even too much time. Right. So we do, an obedience session might be 5 to 8 minutes. You start them out, bringing them up, getting them high, having fun. Woo, let's go, loosen them up. And then we get into whatever they're working on with their obedience session, jumping on a dog stand, getting in the ground blind, doing a little heel work, jumping on the dog stand, get a bumper, heel work, get them going, and then end on a high note. If you were, and that'll be my first piece of advice, I guess, for the show, is a lot of folks will overdo their one session a day. I'd rather break it up into smaller mini sessions so that dog comes out hot. Because what you would end up doing is you've got that dog for 10 or 15 minutes. It's doing really well. And that last 15 minutes, you may be losing steam and they start making mistakes. They're getting hot. They're getting mentally exhausted. I'd rather end on a high note and get back into it, an hour later, a half hour later, put them up, have a, swig of water, chill out, listen to a couple songs, pull them back out and do it again.
So I'm glad you clarified that, because that's it's like a poignant thing to point out. Is I think that a lot of times people think about a professional trainer and you've got all of these different drills set up and you're putting in a ton of time each day to these dogs. But really what you've done is you managed to figure out how to be really efficient with them, utilize that attention span, for however long it is. And when you're talking 10 to 15 minutes of training, I mean, that's half a Simpsons episode, man. Like when people are like, I don't have the time. It's not that. It's like you don't know what to do in that little time frame to get the most out of them. And that's really one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you. When we were chatting down at Seaweed down in Charleston where we met, you were talking about a lot of the dogs that you've trained to like a really high level.
Mhm.
These dogs that are field trial dogs, and they've got, amazing blood in them. And that's like a whole different kind of world that's not, generally probably not that interesting to like the average dog owner, but the
Sure.
lessons are like huge. And so that's kind of where I wanted to go with you is, how does the average person recognize the ways in which they can sort of level up their dog? And, the average guy's not dealing with a field trial champion or anybody who's going to be in contention, but he's dealing with a dog that probably has more potential than he thinks.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of things that we could dive into to take, a puppy that they get from their buddy who he hunts with the dad, and the dad's a good duck dog, and, it got bred to the neighbor's other lab, and he gets his free puppy from his bud. That dog still could level up and have like a pretty high glass ceiling, that hand thrown bumpers in your backyard, fenced in backyard, and it can sit still and go and get that 30-yard throw. That's not challenging the dog at all. You're just exercising the dog. And so the main thing that, a short answer to this would be, what are we working on? What are our goals? What does the end goal look like to you as the dog owner? And then in each session, you're pushing the dog within reason to accomplish these goals. So the example I just gave of hand throwing bumpers in your backyard, that's 50 foot long by 50 foot wide, that's not challenging them. You're feeling good about it. Dog's having a good time, but you're not advancing it and reaching its potential. So go to the soccer field down the road, go to your state land or BLM, whatever. I mean, there's plenty of public land that you can take that dog and challenge them in new environments. There's plenty of training tools that are relatively inexpensive compared to the cost of a dog's life. The handheld shooters, right? I can throw a bumper probably 35, 40 yards. And due to my profession, I'm pretty accurate. Okay. But if I only throw 35 yards every day of that dog's life, when you knock a duck down and it sails off, crippled and kind of cups its wings and sails off 70, that dog's going to 110% stop at 35 yards and begin hunting. We need to get those dogs stretched out, is the term we would use. We stretch them out and get them confident on land and water, going further than you even think they're capable of. And I've
So,
got a 10-month-old puppy from New Jersey. His owners came and saw him after our winter trip, and he did a 175-yard single in my backfield. And they were like, holy cow. It's cool.
right.
That's what it was. And he is nice. He's special, but he's not that special. He's just was taught how to have confidence and see where that thing fell, run to where he saw it fell, establish a good hunt, and pick it up.
So do you like, what percentage of dogs that you get in? Because that's a really common thing, right? Conditioning them to the length in which we can throw, or the distance which we can throw a bumper, never using the dummy launcher, never getting a buddy out or a partner to help you do these long range deals,
Yeah.
or even just having a dog that's trained to sit and stay and walking out 50 yards and then throwing it the next 35 yards.
Great
Like,
point.
how often do you see that?
All the time.
Yeah, it's right.
Yeah. That's an epidemic, right? It's what people know. It's what they're comfortable with. But like you said, you've got a partner, you've got a hunting buddy, maybe you have kids. Send them out and we call them walking singles. So they've got a bucket full of big white bumpers, and they just start walking through the field. So every mark, and a mark is a bird that dog sees. A blind would be a dog or a bird that dog doesn't see, and you have to kick them loose and stop them on a whistle and handle them. But a mark is one that they see. And so they're going to walk through this field and throw these bumpers or ducks, which would be great too. But again, that's something that people have a harder time getting their hands on, which we can maybe talk about as we go. But get them out there. And that person who's helping you can help that dog be successful with different drills and tools to get the dog to stretch out and feel good about running 75 yards, 90 yards, 50 yards.
Right. And this is, I mean, I know quite a few dog trainers. Dawkins talks about this a lot. Like, this is a very common thing that pros recognize and the average dog handler or dog owner doesn't. And what it is, I talk a lot about how professional dog trainers can see into the future. Like, they know what a dog's going to do, and they know the circumstances and the situations that people are going to put dogs in, that when you're training in the backyard, you don't think about that duck sailing like that. That teal that you just tickle a little bit and he makes it way down there in the slough or whatever. But you're going to run into that. Like you're
Yeah.
never going, if you bird hunt even a little bit, you're going to have birds, even roosters. Sometimes we shoot them and they do that, that flutter out like 150 yards and then they land and you're like, okay, now we gotta
Yeah.
get a real mark on them because the dogs never have a real mark on that. They're already looking at something else.
Yep.
And so that is like something that the lesson there anyway is you have to think about how your training is conditioning your dog to perform and where that's going to be at odds with what that dog's going to actually be asked to do in the field, because eventually it's going to be asked to do something that you didn't train for like that.
Exactly. The thing that we say all the time is you want to over prepare so your dog is underwhelmed. Right? So if
Right.
he's never seen a shackled live duck and you go duck hunting and the first bird you shoot is crippled and it's flipping and flopping and swimming and diving and it spooks the young 8-10 month old puppy on its first experience, he was not over prepared and he was overwhelmed, and it can not always screw him up, but it can make it a little bit your job a lot harder to get him to be successful the next time. So, building life experiences from March 1st to October 1st is imperative in your dog's first hunting season. And then, you had made a comment about that 5-year-old dog. Well, once they're steady and obedient and can do, you know, 50 to 150 yard marks, what else could we do? It's fun to go out and make that dog better. You're supposed to enjoy the great outdoors, and it's a sunny, beautiful day today in central New York. Why wouldn't you want to take some bumpers in your dog and go and progress and work on some handling drills and get them running some blinds and teach them multiple marks? And you and your buddy and your 2 hunting dogs can go out and start honoring each other and working together. Like, there shouldn't be a ceiling. Whether your dog is exceptional, okay, or not great, there's always ways that we can improve them little by little.
Right. When you're talking about that, one of the things that I get reminded of almost every year, like with our late season pheasant hunting, which I talk about all the time, we do cattail hunts, right? Like the public land has cattails on it because it's wet and they can't farm it, and that's where all the birds come in when the weather gets shitty and it's the winter's starting to kick in. And you see those dogs that don't have any experience in cattails try to find a rooster, and they are just lost. Like they've never been in that habitat. And I mean, and you got to factor in the excitement level. It's chaos. It's just super overwhelming. Tons of stimuli for them, and you think you can't, you can't like perfectly create that training, but you certainly can train in different types of habitat and teach those dogs to work in thick stuff and think through those problems. And if you don't, you're eventually going to have to figure it out on the fly and it's not going to work.
Yeah, and or give your dog grace during hunting
Right.
season, right? That's a big no-no to me, is losing your patience on the hunt. Like, nobody likes to hunt with a guy, and I've done it. I've been that guy where you lose your patience because the dog doesn't deliver what you expect of it or hope to expect of it. And so if you're hunting with a buddy and you're yelling because the dog's not coming back and it's not listening and it's chasing pheasants, 400 yards away as they continue to fly, that's not being prepared either. You're not going to want to go hunting again.
Right. Right. And that's, again, it's just sort of looking into the future and going, how can I get my dog pretty dang comfortable with a lot of different stuff and a lot of different distractions? And when you talk about, you talked earlier about, the 8 to 10-month-old dog that encounters that first, crippled greenhead or whatever. When you talk about that kind of situation with that first season,
Mhm.
you got to give them a lot of grace,
That's
because
right. Oh, yeah.
they're going to screw up. I mean, I'm reminded of this a lot when I watch my kids in sports. And you see them, you see them shooting baskets in the driveway, and they're pretty confident and they're pretty cocky. And then they actually get in a game, which doesn't matter at all because it's like 7th grade girls basketball, right? Nobody gives a shit but
Hopefully
them.
she can listen to this.
Right, right. But you see just this atrophy in performance. And I think about it with myself all the time. I have missed a lot of big bucks that I could have hit. I could have hit them with a rock in some situations. Pretty capable with a bow when you put me on the range, but every once in a while you put me in the woods and I will whiff with the best of them. And that first season with those dogs is like, you're going to see that play out a lot. You just
Yeah.
are.
Every duck that they get during their first hunting season is life experience. So all training season, we're building those life experiences little by little to prepare them, right? But then that whole first season, you've got to look at it like you're taking a seventh grader and showing them the ropes. Every duck that they pick up, they're going to go, oh, this one landed outside of the decoys. This one landed in the decoys and I didn't break, or I did break and I got brought back and made to sit still. I learned from that. Or the crippled goose that sails over the cornfield and goes 200 yards away, and maybe you walk that dog halfway and lock them in on it and convince them that they're right. Those things are huge. Or maybe they just struggle to pick up the dang goose, right?
Right.
I mean, I've been around guys that are yelling at them, Thatch. I just go get the goose and play with it and let them figure it out, you know?
Yeah. If you're out there and you're yelling, you've lost the plot, buddy.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, everybody does it, right? And it's, you know, a lesson for us is the more people you hunt with, the higher likelihood your ego is going to step in, and you're going to feel ashamed of your dog, and then you're going to yell. I mean, it's one of the reasons, like, I preach solo hunts a lot. I mean, I know it's a little different thing with the duck world, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, especially with a young dog.
Yeah.
But in the upland world, I'm like, man, if you want that dog to relax and work through these problems of where the rooster went or where the grouse went, there's nothing better than having no one else to think about and just going, I'm going to let this dog work that spot where that bird went down until it happens. And sometimes, you know how it is. Like sometimes it's like 10, 15 minutes and you're watching them and they keep going back to one clump of grass and, you know, kind of paw a little bit and run around. And then you're like, get them. And you can see them start to solve that problem. But when you have other people walking in there and everybody's getting impatient and the other dogs are coming in,
Yeah.
now all of a sudden you think that your dog is not good at recovering wounded birds. And it's like, man, you just didn't facilitate an opportunity for that to play out where it learned start to finish on what that particular bird did, because that lesson will never go away.
That's right. I think you just hit the point inadvertently too. Don't hunt it with other dogs.
Right.
You know, that other dog coming and stealing the bird from them, that can, for a softer dog, a softer personality dog, that can crush them. You know, where they felt good about themselves, and then bam, the bigger, bolder dog comes and steals it, or rams into them, or whatever the case may be, and all of a sudden that more timid animal just goes, "This wasn't fun. I don't know what just happened." And it's all
Right.
about building. I'm all about giving a dog a correction when it's needed and when we're training, and there's this and that. But I'm also their biggest advocate and coach and team player, and making sure that they have positive experiences to gain from it. You know, if they break, that's going to probably be a negative experience. But then as soon as they get back on that platform, I'm patting them on the back. Hey, good, sit down, good. You know,
Yep.
you got to be a team player and you got to be a coach, not a dictator.
Well, that point you made there with the two dog thing or the multiple dog thing, man, if there's one thing we've kind of gotten wrong as dog people in like in the bird dog world, it's that idea that the old dog's going to train the young one or the seasoned dog's going to train the pup. And it's like, man, that's almost always a net negative to have that other dog there. You know, if you want to develop one, I wouldn't say always, but I would say a lot.
I would say a lot. Let's go 80-20, because it could. Now, I think when you came on my show, we talked about this with my dad's dog and my old dog. My old dog was a pheasant finding fool. He was a maniac. So he'd go in the briars. He'd go in the thick, nasty. He'd go in those cattail sloughs and just root them out and be all bloodied up and bad to the bone. Well, my dad's dog, learned that if I stayed out of all that stuff, one would come flying out and he would be rewarded by not doing the hard work and getting in there and finding them. And so for a while, it took several years for him to become emboldened to go and do that, because we always hunted them together. And so I think that there's some benefit to having that older dog get that range out of the younger dog, or put that younger dog in positions to find birds, and you know they get some positive. But as soon as you see little light bulbs going off on that young dog, pull the old dog away and just hunt that young one and let them gain all those experiences themselves.
Right. Yeah. We talked about this on your show with my old dog and my young dog too, because when I, when I first started hunting Sadie, her first season, I think Luna was 8. So Luna was, you know, aging out just a little bit, but like really rock solid,
Mhm.
especially when you talk about recovering wounded birds.
Yeah.
And she would recover most of them. And it never clicked in my head that Sadie could kind of had learned to just like, I don't need to do that. Like the other dog will find them, until I only had the young dog. And then I was like, man, there's a big hole in her game there that I didn't see because I
Yeah.
was just blinded by the hunt, you
Yeah.
know? And so just like it's like a situation where we kind of take it for granted. We're like, oh, well, it's always good to have that old dog there. And it's like, man, lots of times it's not, but on the other side, like you said, there are some positives, right? Like I noticed when I started out Sadie and I had Luna there, just the sheer amount of flushes we were going to get because of the old dog,
Right.
there's like a benefit there, like the bird contact, and it can go both ways, but you have to be really careful again. Like what are you conditioning both dogs for? Because you're kind of blinded by the performance of having two dogs, which is nice. Like it's fun to have two dogs working and two dogs looking for wounded birds, but there might be something happening there that will come back around and bite you in the ass eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we take like a double back on that conversation of the glass ceiling and giving people tools to maybe follow, in essence, like a quick program of what I'm doing with that dog so that they can think outside of the box with themselves and their dog. So when I get a puppy myself, we raise it right, a lot of positive experiences, a lot of treat training, a little bit of just a couple retrieves a day, building retrieve drive. We're teaching them to look out via bird boy marks, jumping on a dog stand and staying there for 2 seconds, right? And you're just building a dog that's learning how to learn and having fun learning and building marking ability and getting them swimming and blah, 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 blah. When I get them either, client dogs that are 6 months old, we're going to go through a very formal obedience program. Everything's going to be on leash. We're still going to use treats. Once I know that they understand what is being asked, sit, heel, here, it's all good stuff on lead, I'll collar condition the dog. And collar conditioning, layman's terms is shock collar. But if it's taught properly and overlaid with commands that they already know, then the dogs are understanding. Like if you snatch the lead and pop the lead to make a leash correction, they understand the e-collar is the same thing. It's an invisible leash. So when I say sit and I lift up on the leash and their butt hits the ground, the leash relaxes. Same idea with the collar, right? Collar's turned on, butt hits the ground, collar's turned off. Good dog. So I'm going to go through very formal obedience and teach that over the course of maybe 2 weeks. Maybe the average person who can do a little, make it 4 weeks, right? I also force fetch my dogs. I don't think you have to. It's just a great tool. It teaches the dog how to learn, how to comprehend something uncomfortable, how to turn the pressure off and succeed. And what that ends up being is delivering to hand nicely. So going and getting something, bringing it back to me, sitting down, not chomping it, not spitting it out at my feet, not dropping it coming out of the water, etc. And it also
So
lays the groundwork for like blind retrieves.
let me ask you this on force fetch, because people ask about this a lot, right?
Yeah,
And you said not every dog needs this. Like in your experience, what percentage of dogs do you see that you're like, what percentage are you like, yep, they absolutely need this? Or what percentage do you see that don't?
all of them.
All of them?
Yeah. So I say you don't have to do it because, like we kind of talked about, what are your goals for the dog? If you are totally okay with them dropping the bird at your feet and totally okay with them shaking off at the bank and dropping it and then picking it up and bringing it back, and that is your ceiling, that's what your goal is for your dog, is just to go and get a duck and bring it back, then I think you're fine. I think when you really start thinking about it, what if we had if you could kill one bird this duck season, what would it be? What's your bucket list duck?
Man, I'm a terrible duck hunter, so every greenhead I kill is awesome. I
Yeah.
don't I don't have I like mallards because I live off of teal and wood ducks mostly.
I love mallards too. So you get this perfect layup. He's cupped up. He's coming in. You make a killer shot. Dog makes a beautiful retrieve. He drops it at the shoreline and it cripples and is swimming up and gets under a log. And now you're doing a 10-minute try and find in it BS run around game, literally why they call it a wild goose chase, right?
Right.
Like, what the heck, man? Just if he had just held it, you'd have had that green head that had the band on it. I mean, you name it, it could happen. So I force fetch every single dog that comes through the program because it gives me tools to teach the dog. You don't have, it's got a lot of negative connotations out there. There's a lot of other styles of training, right? The British style of training where they do a hold, but I would be the guy that would argue they're still forcing the dog to hold it, right?
Right.
So it's different, but you're still, every time the dog drops it, you're putting it back in their mouth, popping them under the jaw, hold, hold, hold. So I do think that there are some dogs that have a little more natural delivery to hand, but when the going gets tough, that training is going to drop down a little bit. So you got that crippled rooster whose wings are beating like crazy and their legs are kicking, right? You know what I'm talking about. That dog's going to drop it 20 times on the way back to you. I'll bet $100. And they're going to regrip and regrip and regrip and regrip because it's flapping. If we have a properly force fetched dog, that stuff doesn't happen. And it's just cleaner. So my answer is all of them go through the force fetch program. They're all better for it. They learn how to learn. The end result is they deliver to hand, but they're learning how to learn, how to comply, how to work hard, how to succeed, how to do something that's stressful and difficult at times. And then they come out the other end emboldened. I can do this. I was a little weird about this at first, but 3 days later, I've got it. Light bulbs are clicking and they're learning how to learn. So that's why I force fetch. So once I go through my collar conditioning and force fetch, they're still getting marks in the field and in water. So I'm teaching them how to mark. I'm teaching them decoys and all the good stuff. And we're starting some gunfire introduction and dead birds and live birds. And if they drop it, who cares? They're not done with force fetch. But I've got this process and a foundation that's solid. And I think a lot of folks have a dog that's pretty obedient, but not really when the going gets tough, right? Other dogs around, a rooster flies away, grouse flushes, and that dog's over the hill and through the woods, and grandmother's house they go. So, having a good recall, having a strong, especially duck hunting, a strong sit. So when me and you are in the duck blind, that dog's not breaking on our shot and we can't shoot a cripple or whatever. They need to be steady. So having that really strong foundation is imperative, and that'll help make life easier. If you do the little things great, the big things are easier to do.
Yeah, and so just to reiterate, you're talking about the dogs that come in that are 6 months old, right? And you're talking about doing a lot with these dogs, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you're assessing them for what do they know? What do they need to learn of the basics? So, you can go to the collar and you're not dealing with false positives, and you can go to the force fetch and you're talking gunfire intro and live bird intro. How long do you have your hands on these dogs?
So my gun dog program is 4 months long.
Okay.
So they stay with me for 4 months, and they're getting worked 5 to 6 days a week. And they're getting, like we said earlier, 2 to 4 sessions a day. And you're right, it's drinking from a fire hose for them.
What? So you get these different dogs in, right? They're 6 months old. They're ready for this level that you're going to put them through, and you're putting them through a lot, but they're like, people are going to listen to this and be like, that's so much, but it's not. Like, that's the window to do that. Like, that's the window they learn, and they're starting to mature enough to handle these things.
Yeah.
What do people do wrong that they should do so when those dogs get there, they're just easier for you to just level them up through all these different layers?
I think the big one is being confident. That's a big one. And you can't blame folks who work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, have kids in soccer and basketball and, family parties and things like that. But they're always on a leash because they don't listen. That's part of why I have a job. So they're always on a leash, and they probably have a fenced in backyard. And so the dog knows it's fenced in backyard. It knows its living room, but it hasn't gone and done. Take it on hikes. Let it be a puppy and jump through a stream and clamber over a log and run through brush and fall and trip and have fun. It doesn't have to be perfect. I don't care. I've got a pocket full of treats. And when he comes towards me, I'll get him to come to me and I'll pop him some treats. But I want that dog that's super emboldened, that can, almost strut, man, just feels good about themselves. Swimming, there's a great way to do it, and there's a lot of wrong ways. The great way to do it is wait till the water's nice and warm. You go to a shallow entry place, not a sharp drop off, not waves, not a river. Those are like my no-nos. Put your waders on or maybe your swim trunks and go up to your knees, and that dog will follow you. You have a relationship with him. He loves you beyond belief. He's going to follow. If he doesn't follow, I'm going to, I'm using my bumper to tease him and coax him and just give me an inch and he'll start moving in. And then you give him a little bit more and he'll start moving in a little further. He'll come and he'll or she will follow you in and follow that bumper. And then I stay in between the dog and the shore. The first place, if they do swim, the first place they want to hightail it to is land. I want them to be cool about swimming. So I'll maneuver in between them and the shoreline and then, coach them into me, grab that bumper and flip it back out. So they just spin around and head back out. And so you're just keeping them in a couple, 2-3 reps and then let them get out. But if the first thing they're thinking of is land, let me get out. I got to get out. They go into like a panic mode to get out. But if you can kind of just keep them in the zone of just playing with them, they'll water will be positive. But don't ever throw them in. Don't do the old school, take them on a canoe and paddle to an island and say, you'll swim when you want to come back.
Yeah, don't do that.
No,
don't do that.
I've heard it.
So when I just want to back up a second. So when you talk about these 6-month-old dogs that come into your program, mm-hmm. and the biggest issue across the board is just confidence. Yeah. Do you think that a lot of the people who have those puppies, because I would assume that when they get that puppy, they know they're coming to you. A lot of them know they're coming to you at 6 months old.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I would say again, 80-20. Some people just, I can't handle it. I thought I had time for it. I don't know what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah. Some people just figure out they're just not cut out for it and they got to find a pro. Right. But a lot of people know I'm getting this dog and I'm not confident enough to take my dog through gunfire intro and right on down the line. So I'm going to Bob, whatever. But do you think that that's part of the problem with the confidence thing, that people go, I don't want to do anything to screw this dog up before he gets his hands on it and he's going to mold this dog into this perfect thing? Like, I think one of the things that I see so much with people's relationship to professional trainers is they don't see it as it's sort of like a invisible partnership. Mm-hmm. Like if you don't do what you're supposed to with your dog, the pro can go pretty far with it. But on the front end, on the back end, if you don't keep that up, a lot of that stuff washes away. So do you see like is a part of that just people are like, I don't want to mess this up. So I'm going to just play with my dog in the backyard. I'm not taking him to new environments. Like,
I think that you do hear that a lot. It's like, oh, he looks good. I just didn't want to ruin him for you. It's like, it's kind of hard to ruin a dog. They're pretty moldable. They're pretty pliable, and they bounce back quickly in most circumstances, as long as you don't coddle them. And, I guess I can digress on that if you want me to. But if every time they get nervous, you're like, oh, baby, it's okay. It's okay. What are you doing? You're petting them and you're adding he's fearful or nervous, and you're just petting him and praising him. So don't do that. Just if he gets nervous or something, roll on, ignore it. Or do it, make him do it 10 or 15 times until he's not nervous again.
Right. So what would you recommend? Because when you talk about dogs not being confident coming into your program, I mean, one of the things that I just go back to like mentally is, we preach about socialization a lot, and people are always like, oh, socialization is so my dog is like a nice dog around people. And I'm like, man, there's so much more to it than that, as far as just building their confidence in a variety of different situations with a bunch of distractions, where they're just like you kind of said, that strutting dog has that been there, done that mentality. Yeah. That's a huge component of socialization. And just those early months of like, train them here, work with them there, walk them here, like, let them play in this a little bit taller grass. Like, just let them just figure this stuff out.
Yeah. I think that there's like a real art to it, right? It's not A plus B equals C. I kind of talked about my foundation and how I go step by step so that I'm not jumping ahead or having to go backwards to fix things. But I think that there is this like feel to when the dog is ready to move on. There's a feel for how the dog is feeling in this moment. And I think, you hit the nail on the head. Like, yeah, it should like to meet new people. but it should also feel comfortable to wander off and go sniff the grass. And you should feel comfortable that it can go further than 10 feet from you and it's going to be okay. So put the dog in situations, take it to the soccer game, take it to, the family party where there's kids poking and prodding it. Get it out and let it be a dog. Let it be a puppy. It's going to have a job, if you will, for the rest of its life. And let it be a dog. Let it go wander off and you got to call it 20 times. That doesn't bother me as much as the dog that, you move quick and it shoots to the end of the leash because it's spooked.
Right. You can rein it in.
Yeah. I'd
Yeah.
rather rein it in than have to pump it up all the time.
Yeah. I think, this is going to be a sort of a weird message to give, especially with what you've kind of mentioned about coddling dogs and stuff. My dogs they go everywhere with me that dogs can go.
Mhm.
Typically, we go to Cabela's to buy some swim baits to fish with or something, they go with, like the more that you just include that dog in your life as like a partner, right? Not like that baby that you're
Right.
like you said, coddling, but actually as like a part where you're going to go walk here or go scout deer there or do whatever, like that stuff. I feel like it's just it's so good for them on so many different levels. And it's good for us too, because we get to start to learn to read our dog and see, like, is he really hard to call back, like recall in this situation?
Mhm.
Okay, well, that's going to be something you got to work on. And I think that people get scared, including a dog that way in a lot of parts of their life, but throughout the rest of their life, that's an important thing, like, and of course you have to be careful. Like, I don't know. Have you ever been to the game fair out here? I can't remember if we talked about that before.
Yeah. A couple years ago.
Yeah. So for the people listening, the game fair is this 2 long weekends here in the northern suburbs of the Twin Cities. It's all about bird dogs. It is a chaotic situation. I mean, it's like
Not
50,000. What's that?
not where I'd take a puppy.
Right. That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
So it is a bird dog friendly show. It's an outdoor show, tons of booths, fair food, all kinds of different kinds of like events you can run your dog through, dock jumping and long distance retrieves and time things. And it's really neat, but there's a lot of clay pigeon shooting going on. There's a lot of people blowing on duck calls that have no business blowing on duck calls. And it is a loud, chaotic environment with literally thousands of dogs going through every weekend. And when you think about those dogs, you're talking everything from amazingly well-behaved dogs that can run quadruple blind retrieves at 300 yards without batting an eye, and a lot of dogs that are on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And so we look for situations like that because we're like, well, that is a dog friendly thing. But then you see people bring puppies to it and there's gunshots going off constantly. And that puppy's a foot tall and there are people and big dogs everywhere. And it is just such a bad environment for a
Yeah.
young dog. And so when we're talking about this, be a little careful, right? Like if you take the
Yeah.
dog to the park and it's July 4th, like,
Bad idea. Right.
let's be careful.
Well, and I mean, we met at Seawee. I didn't have a dog with me. There's other factors too that I would encourage you to think about is like how many of those dogs are carrying some sort of kennel cough or something weird going on. I mean, they don't need to be drinking from bowls. They don't need to go to a dog park. There's good places to socialize, and then there's stuff that's a little overwhelming and a little too much. Again, the big thing you're thinking about is how can I make this dog the most successful? If you think that's not going to be helpful, pull back. If you think it could be helpful, and let's try it for 10 or 15 minutes, and just be off to the side and yeah, we could work that. But yeah, the gunfire stuff is spooky. The big dogs, the feet, the people, the everybody poking and prodding, it can be overwhelming for certain puppies that you're hurting, not helping.
Right. And I mean, if you screw that up in the wrong way, we get like gun shyness or something settle in, then you've made a big mistake. And
Yeah.
I've seen, I mean, this is total tangent here, but I've seen people do dock jumping drills with their dog at those events. And you watch those dogs and some of them leap off and they jump 18 feet. Some of them run up and they hit the brakes and fall off and it's funny. But I've seen situations where dogs have run up there and done kind of that stutter step thing and sometimes jump off, sometimes not. And I've heard people say, well, he's never been in the water before. And you're like, man,
Not the
I actually saw that one time at the Y with swimming lessons. I saw a kid jump into the pool to get his test, to get his wristband, and he went straight to the bottom. And the lifeguard jumped in and pulled him out. And the mom said, yeah, I didn't know if he could swim. He's never tried before.
yeah, he
So
can't.
anyway,
That's awesome. That
right.
is good parenting.
Bad idea.
Yeah.
When you talk about these dogs, so you have a 4-month program. They come in at 6 months, go through all this different stuff. How many of them get to where you're like, yep, that I'm good with that progress? Is it all of them?
I go 98%.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's a couple you just can't get there.
Yeah, there's a couple that just it's not in them, and it's not fair to the dog to make me make them, and it's not fair to the owner to pay, the amount of money that they invest in me and that dog for at the end of 4 months to not be satisfied. I mean, my name's on the line too, right? So, but I think overall, like I've had some dogs that at month 3 finally swim, and then they crush it. But the whole time you're being honest with them, like, man, are you sure you want me to keep going?
Right.
Maybe he's
So
just a tough dog.
is this, in your opinion, that 2% that's just kind of the washout dog where you're like, he doesn't have it? Is it just a blood thing? Is it a bloodline thing?
Yeah, sometimes it's breed thing. I don't want to. I hate knocking on different breeds because we're all dog people, and everybody loves their dog, and that's what a good dog. A good dog is a good dog. I don't care what it looks like and how it walks, and it doesn't matter to me. But there are some breeds that you're not stacking the deck in your favor, that it's going to help you make your life easier.
Well,
So
let's talk about those because I
awesome.
mean,
Can't wait
well,
for this one to hit.
I mean, honestly, this is something I write about a lot where I'm like, we look at dog breeds and we go, I like the look of that one, or my buddy has this wire hair and I love it, so I want that. But we
Right.
don't sit back and go, how good of a trainer am I? Like,
Right.
what am I bringing to the table? People ask me all the time, like, why female labs? I'm like, I'm not a professional trainer. So if I get a lot of really good blood in a female lab, she's going to be soft, tons of retrieving desire, and I can work with that. Like,
Yeah.
I need that for myself because that's the easiest kind of dog for me to reward. And, it just works for me. Like if you handed me a Chessie, it'd be a different story. Right. So just like, what are the breeds where you're like, man, this is just a bigger challenge for the average person?
Right. So the first one that comes to mind, because someone asked me the other day if I would do it, and is a toller, a Nova Scotia duck tolling retriever. And retriever's in the name, but they, for, years and years and years and years and years, they've been bred for show, not hunting. And even hunting, they were literally a toll. Them tolling is running up and down the bank playing, and the
Flashing their
duck would
tail.
and that duck would get curious and come in for them to shoot. That's not doing, icy rivers of central New York, 100-yard retrieves. That one is tough. So I've trained a few of them in my past, and one of them turned out good. And the others turned out fine, could do it, but it wasn't fun for the dog and it wasn't fun for me. And it's tough. So again, we're stacking the deck in our favor. So
You don't have to worry about that. I did an article on tolling on Nova Scotia duck tollers one time, and they came after me too. But it was like, you just have to recognize, like, there's a reason they're not very popular, and it's not to say that can't be a badass dog for you. But if you're the average dog trainer or the average dog owner, and you're like, I need a dog that's going to retrieve some ducks and kick up a rooster.
Yeah, I think it's also about being honest with yourself. If you hunt 40 days a year, and that's probably not the dog. If you hunt 2 or 3 and it's little wood duck holes where they got to do 30-yard swims in relatively warm water, probably be fine. But if you're the guy or gal that goes out on Lake Michigan and is hunting diver ducks and it's 12 degrees out, that is the wrong dog for you. And I think I'm going to go back to like a German short hair, a German wire hair, a Drott. Some of those breeds, or some of those individuals in those breeds, are great duck dogs. but they may not point as well. Or they're great pointing dogs and they don't really retrieve as well or have much desire for swimming at all. Those are really difficult to get to love it because innately they were bred to do the other thing. So if you want one like that, if you want to be different, you got to do your research 10 times more because there are breeders who might specify and really choose a real ducky, watery drop versus a pointing drop. So again, you look at yourself. Hey, I hunt 40 days a year and I'm hunting divers, and it's probably still going to be a short hair is not going to do well in January in Lake Michigan. There's probably one or two or five that are going to listen to the show and send us a picture saying my dog does it, but I'll show you 500 that didn't.
Right. Well, that's a really good point there too, because the popularity thing goes both ways, right? If you look at the tollers, they're not that popular out there. They're just not. And there's reasons, right? Whatever. Wire hairs and draughts have gotten pretty popular in the last, 10 years. And so, yeah, you can go find those dogs that they're used in duck blinds like crazy and they perform awesome. And they can be such badass dogs. Like
Yeah.
they can be such badass dogs.
I've
But
trained several that were awesome.
yeah, they really can. But if you're like, I'm a hardcore duck guy and this is what I want, like, is that the best choice? Like if you're a dual purpose upland waterfall, like there's a different case to be made. And
Yes.
so it's, again, like you said, it's just like, we got to be real honest at this point. Like
Yeah.
what's the best choice?
Yeah. And I said it a few times, you're stacking the deck in your favor. So if you've already gotten a dog, that's your dog. But if you're listening to this podcast going, boy, this spring, this summer, I'm thinking of adding one to my family, you need to look at the different breeds. You need to look at how you hunt. You need to look at how much time and energy you can put into a dog, because maybe a German Shorthair isn't the right one because they do need a lot more energy, where most labs, they've got a better on-off switch, I would say. Most, not all. So you're looking at how much you hunt, what your family lifestyle is, how much you want to train, how much you want to put into the dog. And then we're stacking the deck in our favor by choosing a good breeder that is responsible, reliable, does all the health testing, has, like, the parents have, I compete with my dogs. Getting that little dinky 90-cent ribbon is proof that my dogs are smart, team players, work hard, can mark, and can do it. And so, just going down the road to the guy who has a purebred lab that bred to a purebred lab, and boy, they hunt, and you hunt 40 days a year on Lake Michigan. Well, what does it hunt? How do, has he had to throw 20 rocks to get it to go swim? I don't know, but he hunts.
Well, that's a really common mistake that a lot of people make, is like, it's purebred, so it's good enough, and it's this breed, so it'll hunt. But like, how will it hunt? Like
Right.
all of them will probably go pick up a dead bird, like
Yeah.
most of them,
Yeah.
and they'll do parts of it, but really, it's like, what are you going to be working with in that dog? And that's the thing about, like, one of the reasons I want to talk to you is because the ceiling for these dogs, every individual dog has its top level, right?
Mhm.
But what you're talking about is start with a dog where the top level is going to be pretty freaking high. Like,
Right.
give yourself that to work with first, even if you maybe personally can't get there with that dog, at least it's there.
It's going to make your life a lot easier and more enjoyable, and you'll be problem solving a lot less. And the cheapest part about owning a dog is buying the dog. So if your budget is $1,000, we can probably find you a decent one. If your budget's 400, save your money and wait for 1,000. And
Right.
realistically, most puppies that are well bred and have all the health testing done and have competed and whatnot, you're in the 15 to 2,500 range.
Right. Uh, when you talk about this too, I think there's a really good point there. When you get good blood, you have those things you want, right? Like, you have the drive, you have the intelligence, you're going to get a problem solver, the health, the whole thing. But the relationship with that dog, you want easier training. Like, you want a dog that shows up to work, and you want a dog that will, like, be fun to train. And we don't really talk about that a lot, but when you get your hands on one that has really good blood, you're going to train it more. Like it's kind of it's like a snowball effect where you're like, man, I enjoy working with this dog because this dog is leveling up fast, and it shows up and it looks me in the eyes and it's like, what are we doing today?
Yeah.
That's so much of a different experience than getting one that will retrieve, 6, 7 times and then it's going to go off and lay down. Like
Yeah.
there's a component of that not only is that a better hunting dog, or it will be just
Yeah.
generally, but
Yeah.
also your overall experience of just working with that dog is going to be so much more enjoyable.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I it I mean, I don't think we have to beat the dead horse on it, but I just think when you're stacking the deck in your favor by doing your research and finding the right breed and the right breeder to bring this family member into your home. If you're lucky, that dog's going to live 12 to 14 years. And if you really hunt and you really want to hunt, you're going to, and it doesn't, you're going to now still own it for 12 or 14 years. So let's do it right the first time.
Right. So when we're talking about, how high up a dog can go, like what level they can achieve, uh, what's the best dog you ever got your hands on? Like, what's the one where you were like, oh my God, like this one is just the most special?
Oh, that's a good question. I have a handful, and for different reasons. My first dog, because he's your first, and I was probably 22, 23. We'd go back to college together and have a time of our lives. We hunted a ton, we trained a ton. He taught me a ton. He taught me a lot about being more patient. Remember, we talked about, not being that guy. That dog got the worst end of the deal sometimes, but it taught me not to be that guy, and not to be that guy that hunts with you, right? But he was a pheasant finding fool. I would send him on retrieves that I wouldn't send a dog on now. Ice flow rivers of
Oh,
central New
right.
York, and it's 120 yards across, and that we kind of don't know where the duck is. And I'd make that sucker swim across that thing, and he'd hunt the shoreline, and sure enough, he'd come back with the wood duck or black duck, or you'd shoot a hooded merganser, and it starts cruising down the river, and he'd be gone for 10 or 15 minutes, and you're like freezing cold, and here he comes back with a hoodie. I'd be like, eh, let's either get the boat or we'll let that one send, because that's not safe. I mean,
Right.
if they're crippled going downstream and it's January, not safe. And I've learned from that too, but he never quit. Um, I had a Chesapeake that was a client that I raised for him. He's a college buddy of mine, ended up having kids, and just, I can't do the puppy deal. Tried to, I got it at 3 months old. And she was not the highest drive dog. Some days you'd open up her dog box and she'd like wake up and be like, really, dude? And you'd close it and be like, all right, tomorrow. And then tomorrow you'd open up and she'd be like, poof, I'm ready. And I loved her. We passed the Master National twice with her. One of the years, I think there was only like maybe 4 or 5 female Chessies that passed. She just had a lot of heart, and a lot of like heart for me. And when the going got tough, she would go and do it. And you'd kind of look at her like, I don't know, she kind of looks like she wants to be lazy today, but she would give you her all in her own way. She was real special. The probably highest titled dog I have trained, her name is Lizzie. It's another client dog. Very soft, very well composed, and then lives for it. 100 miles an hour. But she's not like jittery or anything crazy. It's very well, like in her brain, she's just composed, but is giving you 110% every time. She got qualified all age QA2. She's only ran one Master National and passed it. And every day she shows up to work and gives you everything she's got and does it well.
So the last 2 dogs you've talked about, that dog and that female Chessie, you've kind of said it without saying it that you could ask a lot of those dogs and
Yeah.
they would just deliver.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's so cool. And some of the things that we do, we kind of talked about it in the beginning of just hand throwing in your backyard. If these dogs only had that, they never would have accomplished what they've accomplished. They've done some amazing things and amazing retrieves, and competitions are fun, man. Like, for anybody who's listening to this that's never been to one with their dog, go and go and watch, and then think about signing up, because hunting season is 60 days long. Hunt tests, you could go and, make new friends and be around buddies and have a little lunch on your tailgate and take your dog and have a nice Saturday with you and the family at a hunt test. Like, it's not for everybody. They are 90-cent ribbons, and in the grand scheme of life, whatevs. But it's a cool accomplishment, and it does give you these goals to say, like, boy, we got our junior hunter. What a great accomplishment. Has to deliver to hand, has to be relatively well-mannered, has to be relatively steady, and it has to do 60, 70-yard marks with live birds, at least one being live. And, that's a good duck dog. Well, now the next level is they've got to do a double. They've got to sit steady and watch another dog work, and they got to run a blind retrieve. That's a real duck dog. We can hunt together, and if it doesn't see it fall, I can stop it on a whistle and change directions and get it there. And what a great goal to have for you and your hunting buddy. Go out there and get better.
Man, so that is a great, maybe what last point for us to wrap this up with, because I've been writing about this a lot lately, and I feel like at this stage in my life, I notice, the very first lesson that I really got that's like this was when I started tournament fishing when I was in college, and I was fishing pro-am. So I was an amateur, or a pro-co, so I was a co-angler, and I got paired up with dudes who were so good at this thing that I was very passionate about, but the level that they were at, like, there's some of the guys that I drew in those tournaments, the things I learned from them, I use them every year, all the time. I've taught so many people, and it was just like a matter of being exposed in person to somebody who had that skill set.
Yeah.
And I think about this with dogs all the time, where, you think about, you got to get around a guy like you, or you got to get around Doc or whoever. And that's great. Like, watching somebody work who really knows what they're doing that education's important. But even just like you said, going to a trial, going to a hunt test, and watching what the dogs are capable of, and watching, seeing where the wheels fall off, and seeing where somebody it's just perfect. And then you realize, like, what's possible. And those dogs, those are the dogs you have access to. Like, if you're listening to this, you can have that dog that has that blood. Like, what you do with it is a different story. But seeing that and seeing how they're handled and seeing what they can do is so important for just opening our mind to going, man, I've been like, that backyard trainer. You go, there's so much more I could do with this to level up my relationship and help my dog level up.
Yeah. There's nothing better than having a hunting buddy kind of give you the pat on the back and be like, that dog was awesome. That was the coolest retrieve I've ever seen. Or, boy, what an enjoyable dog to hunt with. That's a great compliment. And that should be everybody's goal, to train, own, and hunt with a dog that everybody compliments, because it's an enjoyable hunting companion and brings the birds back.
Yep.
That's the name of it.
It really is. And it's crazy how easy it is to sort of go through life and not be exposed to that. And it's a shame, but you kind of have to seek it out a little bit, and you kind of have to put yourself around people who at least know what they're doing, or at least can recognize that situation. But it's just, I think about this all the time with, I have two buddies who run ultra marathons. One of them runs the 100-milers in the mountains. The other one does, like, 50Ks and, like, long shit, right? Like, real runs, right? And when I started running, 8, 9 years ago, I would be, like, struggling to get, like, a 5K, which is 3.1 miles. And I'd be talking to my buddy, and he's like, yeah, I did a 40-mile training run this morning. And it's like, you could be discouraged by that pretty quickly, right? Like, you could be discouraged if you hung around the wrong trainer, or you watched the wrong field test or something. You could be like, it would be easy to be like, I'm never going to get there. I could never have that. But it's almost just a mindset thing to just go, okay, maybe you will never train like Bob Owens. Probably not. But if you take away something, some part of it, to just help your dog get a little better here, or to help yourself not lose your shit when your dog doesn't do what you want, it's just a net positive. And so getting around those people and those dogs that are good, it's just so important.
Yeah. I don't ever want to run 50 miles. I'm just going to throw that out.
Dude, most people don't, but it's so valuable. I mean, I had a conversation last night. We're going way off in the weeds here, but our old neighbor moved away probably like 5 years ago, and his daughter's still really good friends with my daughters. He got divorced like a year ago, and he was talking about he's been going to the same gym I go to, but he's like very nervous about the weight room, which a lot of people are. And I was talking to him about it, and he's like, I don't know how to lift weights. I want to. Like, he's kind of back in the dating game, and he's not like,
come on.
Right. He's like, what can I do to stack the odds in my favor here? Yeah. And I'm like, dude, come lift with me. I'll teach you. And he's like, he's so nervous about that. And I told him, I said, the first time that I went into the weight room after I quit drinking, and I was like, I didn't want to go in there, right? Like, I was in terrible shape, but I'm like, I wanted to lift weights and get stronger. The very first dude I met is this totally jacked, sleeve tattoos, bald head. He's actually a canine police officer here in the cities. He's a really good friend of mine now. He's a badass dude, runs this Belgian Malinois that is he's a cool dog. Yeah. I hear a lot of stories from him about dog work. But he was like super nice and just like totally non-judgmental, just like another one of the dudes in the weight room. And I told, this old neighbor that I was like, man, nobody cares. Just like go try to get better. And I see that in all these aspects of our life where, like, if you're scared to run your dog because of this or that, it's like, you think that you're going to go to that field trial and those people haven't been through that a billion times?
That's right.
Yeah, they have. They're going to walk up to you and be like, try this, or I had a dog that was just like that and I had to do this and now this. And it's like, oh, you'll be accepted in. It's a different thing and it'll help you so much.
Yeah, that's super fun, man. I just, again, it extends your hunting season. Why wouldn't anybody want to do that with their dog? It's great.
Right. Absolutely. Bob, this has been so much fun, man. Where can everybody listen to you, find your socials, all that good stuff?
Yeah, no, I had a great time. Thanks for having me on. Everybody who tuned in, appreciate your attention. I know it's pulled in every different direction. So the fact that you listened to us to this point means a lot to us. You can find me on Instagram. That's where I'm most playful. It's at Lone Duck, LONEDUCK. Our podcast is called Lone Duck's Gun Dog Chronicles. A lot of training tips, a lot of hunting stories, and we've just have fun with it. It's great to just talk with people like yourself and get to know your backstory and your hunting dogs, and then training tips to get you to the next level. And then YouTube, I've got a couple hundred videos on YouTube that help you get you where you want to be with your dog. So here to help. And again, Tony, thank you for having me on.
Hey, what's the YouTube channel?
Lone Duck Outfitters.
Okay, perfect. Yep. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it for this episode. Keep tuning in every other week for regular Houndations episodes, but also keep an eye out for more of these interviews. We have a lot of big stuff planned in the dog space here at Meat Eater, and as you can probably guess, a lot of it will be produced by yours truly. As always, thanks for listening and for all of your support. And if you want some more dog content like training articles, or maybe you want to watch Sadie and I go crunch some public land roosters on film, head on over to themeateater.com and you can check out our latest content. We drop new stuff every single day. There's so much good stuff there. And again, as always, thank you so much for your support.